Hello, my name is Woody. This is Change in the House of Pods, a podcast about Deftones. Today, my guests are Danny Kopij and Sid Valiquette from Bore. That's Lapel du Vide, a song we'll talk about in this conversation. Bore is an abrasive metal and hardcore band from New York, Long Island specifically. And today, you're going to hear a little about their experience growing up there, being immersed in that rich music scene. And I think we might have found some similarities in the Long Island and Sacramento music communities, in the variety of bands that have emerged from those scenes, the eclectic mix of successful artists that hail from Long Island and Sacramento. It's fun because both Danny and Sid are big fans of those bands like Team Sleep, of course, and Dredge, and Far, and Crosses. And I think this is a good conversation to begin the end of this season, talking about some of the cool bands that come from the Sacto scene, bands that popped with Deftones, and bands they helped put on the map. The early years are going to be a focus as we wrap up this season here, and clearly where Deftones come from and the people they grew up with, the people they surround themselves with now, are extremely important to them. They've always brought bands from home on tour with them, and they continue to work with those musicians to this day, because they're friends. And Deftones have said it plenty of times, if the hang is good, the music is good. And I think that's why we always see them hanging with their friends, collaborating with their friends. And I'll tell you what, this conversation you're about to listen to, this was a pretty good hang, man. After they introduce themselves, Danny and Sid are going to share how Bore got started and what they're up to now, and then we'll dive into Deftones. This is my conversation with Danny and Sid from Bore.
Name is Sid. I play bass in Bore. I think I joined 2018, so spring, April of 2018 or so.
August, I think. Yeah, I'm Danny. I play guitar in Bore. We started August 2018.
Okay.
Sid and our singer Brandon actually used to be in a band called Mutiny Abroad, and we became friends because I was a fan of their old band. And just through the Long Island music scene, we kind of got to know each other, became friends. When Mutiny kind of started winding down and kind of everyone started going their own separate ways, Brandon reached out about starting a new band, and that's where we're at now.
Bore started in late 18.
Yeah, exactly.
So are you guys both from Long Island, or are you from? Yeah, really?
Well, I'm from Long Island. Grew up. Danny's from the city.
Oh shit.
Yeah, I grew up between Queens and Suffolk, so I'm kind of a half city boy, half suburban boy.
That's what's up. I think I discovered you guys just through, it was sort of random, like it was like a playlist on Spotify that you guys were on. It was like Northeast hardcore or Northeast heavy music or some shit. It was like a random sort of and then I found one of your songs. I was like, whoa, okay, this is for me. And so that's how I started digging you. But it wasn't until like a whole couple years later now that I well, maybe a year. I think it was like middle of 2020 when I first heard one of your songs. It's the one with the French name that I'm not going to be able to pronounce. How do I say it?
Lapel du Vide.
Lapel du Vide. And go ahead.
Well, it's I don't even know if I'm saying it right. It translates to the call of the void, which is like basically the way I could describe is the voice that you have inside your head when you're standing, like say you're at the Grand Canyon, you walk up to that edge, that little voice in your head that says, just jump. That's the call of the void, Lapel du Vide.
That's cool as hell.
Yeah.
That song fucking rips.
Oh, dude, thank you, man. I appreciate that.
So I think that song too, that probably didn't come out too long before I found you guys. Is that song 2020-ish or 2019-ish? You haven't released very much material, right? You guys only have like a couple of like 5 album releases or 5 song releases.
We have 2 EPs and a split. We put out our first EP in 2019, and then Bore 2, which has Lapel du Vide, the song that you're talking about. That was May of 2020. And then we just released a split with our boys in Utmost this past July. And this year we're actually last day of November, we're booked to start breaking ground on this LP.
Get out of town, really?
Yeah, yep. We're gonna be holed up in Bayonne, Jersey for 2 weeks straight, just living and breathing it.
Have you guys been writing and putting together riffs, or like where are you at in all of that?
Oh, well, the record's basically finished. I think we wrote 17 songs, cut it down to like 10 to 12. Our guys got to finish up some lyrics, maybe like 3-4 songs, but past that, everything's good to go.
Dude, that's sick. Are you stoked?
Oh, dude, beyond belief.
Absolutely.
Because it's I've always wanted to be in one of those recording situations where you're just there for 2 weeks. Not one of those things where you show up in the morning, grab your coffee. All right, what are we doing today? Guitars. All right, do your things and get out of there. Like, to actually wake up, studios down the hallway, grind at it all day, see whatever tones you could throw at the wall, whatever cool ideas you could throw at the wall.
Sid, you too. You got all your parts ready. You ready to go?
Oh yeah, I'm excited for my bass to actually cut through. No offense to previous engineers, but for real, yeah, not gonna lie. Oh yeah.
Is this the first LP for both of you guys? Like the first full?
Yeah, I would say so. Mutiny Abroad. Well, I mean, for me personally, Mutiny Abroad had like 2 or 3 EPs. So yes, this would be my first full length personally, professionally recorded. So I'm stoked on that. It's been like 7 years.
I think for me, I don't think it's my first full length that I've done, but I think it's the first one professionally recorded one where we're going in the studio and kind of not sparing any expense or sparing anything on this one.
Dude, that's really exciting. So have you started mapping out what happens after you release it? Tour, or what your plans are? How, because it's always interesting to me when I see a rollout of an album. Like, you have to, obviously put together packaging and images and all. There's a lot of stuff that just isn't making music that you have to, put into releasing music. How far into that are you?
We're still trying to figure out like an aesthetic, art, and an album title, and then from there on out, that's where the videos kind of fall into place. The kind of the art and the look of the whole promo cycle starts falling into place. And usually, I think when our singer Brandon, he finishes the rest of the lyrics, we're kind of confident that what we want is just going to pop out at us, and we're going to run from there. But yeah, I mean, definitely a bunch of touring, just trying to get the record out there, as many people as we possibly can, and hope people like it.
Where you guys play now, Sid? Where are the spots that you guys hit? I feel like I've seen you guys post stuff from like Brooklyn. Didn't you do something in St. Vitus recently too?
Yeah, we played with friends of ours in Capra at Vitus a few months ago. Yeah, like Brooklyn, Manhattan, Queens, Long Island, kind of getting around the city and working on branching outwards a little bit more. We're playing with this awesome band from the West Coast called Pound tomorrow. It's like instrumental, kind of like tech core, like Meshuggah, but even more technical.
Cool.
And then we're playing with Greyhaven, Limbs, and Callous Cowboys next month, which I'm fucking ecstatic for.
Damn, Greyhaven's kind of taking off right now.
Dude, that record is fantastic.
They've got a nice little chunk of momentum. I'm co-hosting a metal show here, and so I'm constantly searching and looking and trying to find cool shit to play. And man, it seems like a lot of people have brought that Greyhaven to my attention, or to it seems like it's in places like people are catching on. It's cool to see just hardcore music and heavy music finding, I don't know, a little wind behind the sails, I guess. It's
yeah,
exciting.
Definitely.
It's exciting to see the heavy music catching people's attention, or at least being even sort of relevant anymore. You know what I mean? It seems like it's been a while outside of just locally.
I mean, I feel like music is definitely cyclical in a lot of ways. And I feel like right now we're in this sort of like late 80s, early 90s renaissance, where all of a sudden all this alternative and all this kind of like left of the dial sort of stuff is really just kind of finding its way out into the surface.
Totally. I started following this playlist not too long ago on Spotify. It's like new gaze. It's like
yeah.
It's like, oh, that's clever. I like it. I'm with it. A lot of the and the same thing with like there's a similar version for grunge. You know what I mean? It's like, like you said, it's coming around. The cycle is returning.
Yeah, I mean, what did I heard subgenres. I heard someone call something soft grunge before, grunge core. It's like, all right, man.
Mm.
What are we
That
doing?
sounds hot. Soft grunge sounds hot. I'm into it.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so between the two of you, who is the bigger Deftones fan?
Okay, I'm gonna be straightforward and say that I grew up with the first four albums, and that shaped a lot of my musical upbringing. And I just recently, like 2 weeks ago, listened to Koi no Yokan, and it's phenomenal. I love it, and I didn't even realize it came out like 10 years ago. It sounds like it could have came out like last year. Danny has definitely listened to a lot more of their more relevant latter half of their career stuff. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Danny,
Yeah,
how did you get into Deftones?
The cool older cousin really is the best way I could put it. I heard My Own Summer, probably like some, one of those 90s like horror movies or something like that. And I fell in love with that sound, and I brought it up to my older cousin, and she had her mom get me Adrenaline for my birthday.
Mhm.
And then from there on out, dude, I was bored. Engine Number 9, Lifter, like that whole album just blew me the fuck away.
That's sick.
I've been hooked ever since.
You were what? How old and like what yearish was this?
This was probably right before White Pony came out. I was maybe
Oh, word. Wow.
9 or 10 years old.
Wow. And what about you, Sid? Like, how old were you? You said you started rocking. You were with the first four, like when Adrenaline came out, like 95, like that far back, or not quite?
Born in 92, so not quite.
Well, you never know. You might have been. You might have been
Possibly.
listening to it. You didn't know it.
Right. So my older brother is a few years older than me, and he got me into a lot of good music, 90s and early 2000s. And I would say probably one of the first tracks I heard was probably like Change or even Be Quiet and Drive. But I definitely didn't start getting into them like heavier until Self-Titled came out around 2003. So
And how old were you about 2003?
uh,
Well, 10, 11 years old, almost
was
10
it
years old. Yeah,
11?
right. Because 92.
Yeah, I
Wow.
was 11. Yeah, that's pretty.
That's some heavy shit to get into in when you're not even 10 years old. What other kind of music were you listening to, Sid, when you were
I
finding
grew up.
Deftones?
My father played drums, and I learned how to play bass. I got a bass guitar when I was like 9, 10 years old. And me and my dad and brother would jam like old Nirvana and Zeppelin and stuff like that. Black Sabbath, it's a huge influence. So yeah, around that time, it was all like Tool, Perfect Circle, Nine Inch Nails, Deftones, early Korn, and yeah, a lot of that stuff. I didn't get into like hardcore until like early mid 2000s with like Every Time I Die and the Bolorama music video. But yeah, before that, it was all just 90s and early 2000s stuff.
Sid, what about you, Danny? What other kind of stuff were you listening to when you were introduced to Deftones?
I mean, I got lucky with a dad that was a musician, so he was always going out and buying CDs. So I discovered who Decapitated was at a young age. Like I found out who like Terrorizer was when I was like 5, 6 years old. So I was already privy to like extreme styles of music.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, he was kind of putting me on to Stevie Ray Vaughan and kind of like BB King, Muddy Waters and stuff like that. And then that was at the same time you had like the whole new metal movement happen on MTV, like, Deftones, Korn, Nothing Face was huge to me back then, Spine Shank. And then hardcore started creeping in. The same cool older cousin that got me Adrenaline got me Satisfactions to the Death of Desire from Hatebreed the next year, and then fucking off from there.
Were you playing instruments at that point? Were you learning how to play music at all?
I was picking up my dad's guitars and banging on them and trying to figure out how to take them apart so I can put them back together to his chagrin. But
cool.
I didn't start taking it seriously, I'd say, until I was like 12.
Yeah. That's really interesting that both of you guys are, both of you have parents who are musicians. I think that's.
Yeah, we got indoctrinated young.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you don't really get the opportunity to experience music unless you're exposed to music. And
oh yeah, absolutely.
Listening to it is one thing, and often it can be passive, but I would imagine it's much more engaged or interactive, like when your parents are musicians. Is that the case?
Absolutely.
For you guys?
Yeah, definitely privileged in that sense and grateful because
Yeah.
it's like firsthand experience and it's great. Yeah, I grew up going to like family parties and friends parties where they were like big on blues. So that was definitely a big part of my upbringing as well.
And the Long
Yeah.
Island scene in particular, it sounds like so I really did not get introduced to hardcore music until I don't know, probably within the past 5, 6 years. Like I'm still relatively new to the game. But one of the first bands that I fell in love with was Incendiary. And so having gotten to talk to Brendan from Incendiary, he was like one of the first people that I got to interview for this podcast. And he really laid out like what the Long Island experience is like and being in that scene. Was it as engrossing as he sort of described it, maybe in the late 90s, early 2000s? Is it was what was your local music scene like for you and your engagement in it
I
coming
mean,
up?
definitely very fertile. Like I started going to shows maybe around like 2004, 2005. And that's when like the last era, which was like, like Glassjaw, Movie Life, Vision of Disorder, Mind Over Matter, Taking Back Sunday and whatnot, that wave was just crashing. The bands that blew up and kind of left Long Island, and the other ones kind of fell apart. So it was this weird transitional phase of like, it was a lot of like scene core, metalcore. So it was like Anaerabe, Love for Enemies, Bellicus, like From the Pawn. And then like deathcore started creeping in. So that's when you had like, Parts and Turbine, Dr. Acula started coming up around then. So it was a transitional time for the scene. But like Long Island, what's awesome about it is everyone knows everybody. You'll have a pop punk band on the same bill with a grind band, and it's fine.
Totally.
It works. And yeah, I mean, it's really just, it's such a small scene.
And that seems like it probably made it pretty easy to get into Deftones just because they have such a, I don't know, left of center sound or
Dude,
way
honestly,
over.
I always said that. So I don't know if you're too familiar with the band Glassjaw,
Sure.
but Glassjaw to me, they almost seemed like Deftones and Glassjaw were two different sides of the same coin. Whereas Deftones, they came out of the metal scene and went this experimental route. Glassjaw came out of the hardcore scene and went this experimental route. So to me, like they were always kind of like, I held them in the same sort of esteem and respect.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that a lot of people do. I think that that's pretty consistent. It's interesting though, the trajectory that their paths took. I mean, Glassjaw sort of what did they just call it quits, or did they just sort of walk away for like a decade?
Years of self-sabotage.
Yeah, is that the story? Because I'll admit, like I am familiar with a couple of their albums and know a few of their songs for sure, but
they had the negative brush with the major label machine, where they had the hype. I think they got signed to a Roadrunner, and then that was terrible. So Warner Brothers bought out their contract, and somehow that was even worse. So I think there was something that they weren't allowed to release music, or they couldn't get the licensing back to their records for like 15 years. So they were doing these kind of like weird DIY EPs and vinyls that they were kind of putting out under the radar. And I think like maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, they just started hitting it hard again.
That's funny. The big bad record label fucking shit
Yeah.
up. Surprise,
So,
surprise.
I mean, that era too, I feel like, streaming was coming in, downloading was bigger than ever. So labels were doing anything they could to get anybody on there.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one of the things that interests me the most about Deftones and the way that they've managed to, survive. I mean, they were one of the first bands that really capitalized on the internet and identified the opportunity in the internet, and yet as flooded as it got, as flooded as like Napster or like LimeWire and all the shit that was popping off in the early aughts, all the bands that came in and all the bands that labels were looking for and signing that were new metal and that sort of thing. It's an interesting time. It's just a really interesting time in music just across the board, and how they managed to stay afloat and continue to carve out their own path. It's really interesting. It's a really interesting thing. But you said you lost, or so you picked up around 03 with the self-titled, and then you went backwards, it sounded like, and you were rocking with those albums basically until the past few years or whatever, when you finally picked it. Because,
Yeah, forever. I'm all about the nostalgia. So like, it took me a while to get into the newer stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe because of how like more drony or melodic the songs were, like in some sense, and that's not to overgeneralize all their albums, newer albums, but it's actually funny because when I was first getting into them, Adrenaline was also the first CD I purchased. And I think my brother like wanted to like trade it to me for something else. And I was like, nah, nah, bro. And yeah, so I kind of did go backwards and just listen to everything. Saturday Night Wrist is where I started to fall off because I think I was getting more into hardcore in general.
Yeah.
And yeah, and then they kept cranking out albums. I think the longest span between albums was maybe between Koino and I guess whatever was after that.
Yeah, Gore. Koi was 12 and then
4
Gore was
years.
16. Yeah.
Wasn't even that crazy, 4 years, you know. But
Yeah.
yeah, I liked Koino, Yokan, and Ohms. I haven't listened to much of Gore or Diamond Eyes.
Dude, they're so good.
Some of like Saturday Night Wrist as well. Yeah.
Gore is a very divisive album, but I love Gore. I love Gore because of how weird it is.
Mixed reviews of it.
Talk about that. What do you mean by that?
Because when Gore came out, like I immediately saw the whole, beef between Steph and Chino regarding making of the record, where Chino wanted to make kind of like a heady, spacier record, and Steph wanted to kind of make like, I think it was Rolling Stone that said it best, that Chino was playing Morrissey to Steph's Meshuggah. And you definitely hear it all over the record, man. It's like these creepy, sprawling, atmospheric parts, like, Prayers Triangles, Hearts Wires, which is the singles. Like those are just creepy, cool fucking songs. And then Phantom Bride, man, it's just like that Jerry Cantrell solo at the end of it. It's just the vibe that they captured on this whole record is just great to me.
I love Gore for a lot of different reasons, and I understand why it's so divisive. That was probably my computer blinking at us. I don't know if you heard it or not, but yeah, the thing that really trips me out about Gore, and I think the reason that people don't like it or aren't feeling it as much, is the quality of the production. Not quality isn't the right word, but like that sound, just the audio quality. It sounds, to me, I've said this plenty of times, that it sounds like they were trying to sound live, like create how they sound like at an outdoor, like at a festival, but in a studio space.
I could see that. I mean, I'm a sucker for, like, I'm a huge Dredge fan, and this album gave me a lot of Dredge vibes.
Yeah.
Where it's just that kind of eclectic, kind of trying to reach out, see what other space and atmosphere you can kind of lay alongside the riffing and whatnot.
You tweeted about the other Sacramento bands, didn't you?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was you, huh? That was how I sort of picked up that, because I started following you guys obviously after I started listening to your music, but then it was when you tweeted out that there were other bands, other Sacramento bands other than Deftones that are, I don't remember the tweet verbatim, but yeah, it was like, there are other fucking good bands. I don't know who needs to know this or something. I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, there are.
I think the word I used was unfuckwithable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
totally.
but dude, like Far, Dredge, you said Willhaven, like that whole, dude, that whole Sacramento scene in the early 90s was nuts.
Yeah.
And like, I think Dredge, like hands down, is like, I feel like Dredge should have kind of gotten a lot of the notoriety that Deftones got, but I think they were too weird for people to follow along. Like every record was just another major left turn after the record before it.
I got into Dredge for a hot minute when I think whatever tour that was back in the mid-aughts when they were opening for Deftones. And that's like a lot of the Deftones adjacent bands. That's sort of how I discover them, because they pick them up and they take them on tour with them.
So that must have been Saturday Night Wrist for Deftones, and I think Catch Without Arms for Dredge.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Like 04, 05. Yeah, that's around when those records came out.
Yeah, that sounds. Yeah, you encyclopedia. Does he like this all the time,
Yeah,
where he just got facts at his fingertips?
Yeah,
I'm not even going to fact
of,
check you, because I believe you. I know that. I feel like you're right.
Yeah, it's kind of scary, you know.
But helpful as fuck, because Dredge did do some really interesting stuff. But I think you're right, because they were like super experimental.
Well, because I mean, they started in that same whole kind of like, you trace back their early demos, and it sounds like that same sort of like Helmet meets Tool sort of thing that like the Deftones started with, and a lot of those, you know, like early new metal bands started with. But Dredge, they got, if you want to, I guess, say weird for lack of a better word, but Dredge got fucking weird, man, and I loved it.
Yeah.
Because it was just, I think the last record they put out, I think it was called Chuckles and Mr. Squeezy or something like that, something crazy.
Oh yeah, that's weird. That's a little weird. That's a little bit weird.
And the album cover is even weirder. It's just like a tattooed girl in like a bikini wearing like a Richard Nixon mask or like a clown mask or something like that, and that's it.
But
and the record,
yeah.
What's that?
Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say that the record is like, it took me forever to get into that record because it was so weird. There was nothing like metal or even like shoegazy or alty about it. It almost like, in a lot of ways, it had like more in line with like Blur and like Gnarls Barkley than anything.
That's interesting.
It's a weird record.
I feel like the Sacramento scene, like there's something about that part of the country, I think in a similar way to Long Island, frankly, where there is this really interesting spectrum of music that comes out of it, and maybe a couple, you know, bands sort of catch national attention and maybe you know, get hot for a little bit, but just the sheer number of bands that emerge from both parts of the country, it's wildly unique. It seems like it's really fascinating.
I feel like same could be said, though, for most cities. They're insular but connected, if that makes any sense. Where like Long Island's a good example, because Long Island's it's its own environment and microcosm where people who live in Long Island their entire lives think very differently and live very differently, and everything about them is different than people that live in the city. Like there are people that live 40 miles away from Manhattan that will maybe be in Manhattan twice in their lives. And I feel like Sacramento, I've only been to Sacramento twice, but I get a similar sort of vibe with them as well, where it's this kind of like suburban sort of community, and it's near all these major cities, but it's also very separated at the same time.
Yeah, that sounds hella accurate.
I mean, Long Island especially, it's very red, you know, it's very like Republican, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, blah, 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 like all that sort of shit.
Sacramento too, though, right?
I think so. I'm not too sure about Sacramento. Like with Long Island, I feel like a lot of the music is definitely a backlash against that sort of like, you know, suburbia dream, against, you know, the politics that are being pushed on you from a young age. And that's how we got, you know, our vision disorders, our glass jaws, you know?
Yeah. That's really fascinating. That's really interesting. I mean, timing is everything. But I think time and place, like for as cliche as it sounds, like time and place have a lot to do with everything, with how anything happens. And that's really fascinating to think about, especially the parallels of them being geographically sort of opposite sides of the country. And that's really interesting to think about. So, Sid, when you were going back, I know you got Adrenaline first. You said you got Adrenaline first, and then but it was about the same time of the Self-Titled. Was Self-Titled the one that you like got into, or was Adrenaline the one that you got into? I mean, there's 4 albums in there, right? There's Around the Fur and Pony. I mean, that's kind of a rich collection to just dive into.
Oh yeah. I started with just like some of the singles off of each album, and then went in order, like Around the Fur, then White Pony. It wasn't actually until like a few years later that I really started to actually appreciate Self-Titled in all of its glory. Like the whole album is one of my favorites, honestly, and I guess it's underrated. I mean, in my opinion, I guess it was trying to follow up White Pony, which isn't an easy task, and it was only a couple of years later. So I still love that album so much. I rock that a lot.
Is that your favorite from the first 4? It's never easy to like pick a favorite, but I always like do it because it's a little bit tormenting. You know what I mean?
It is. It's especially with this band. Absolutely. Yeah, I would say so. And it doesn't, you know, negate the fact that like some of the deep cuts that I really love off of the first 4 albums are like just as important and vital. to me and like shaping my love of music and my influences in general and how I play. So honestly, also like one of my favorite Deftones related artists, which it's one of my like top 5 favorite albums of all time, is Team Sleep's first album.
Incredible.
So good. Oh man. And speaking of Sacramento artists and how diverse, the array of, musicians were that came out of there. I was just like thinking it's crazy. Like Hella came out of there, which Zach Hill was the drummer.
Hella, yeah.
Dude, yeah, probably Death Grips. Zach Hill at The Advantage, which is like that, like they just covered NES songs, and it was like in a really like mathy way. And so that was Spencer Seam, the guitarist, and yeah, that was Hella, Spencer Seam and Zach Hill, the duo, and then Zach Hill played drums on the Team Sleep album, and he's just like he's a maniac, insane drummer. So I think that album like is one of my favorite albums of all time. And obviously Chino, is the front man, and there are multiple vocalists on that album. Actually, it's just like so atmospheric, so ethereal, and I think it really really like gives Chino like a different flavor. Like it's amazing to me. It's also the nostalgia aspect, but even if I listen to it today, it would still have that same zest and magic to it. So yeah, so many interesting bands came out of that. The Cramps came out of Sacramento. It's like so many bands. Yeah.
I'm so stoked that you brought up Team Sleep, because I love Team Sleep. Did you start getting into them like when the like when they were first making music, like when they started releasing the like there were the demos that were leaking out, and they had you could still, well, now you could find all the demos on YouTube, but back then you had to scour Napster or some crazy shit to find Team Sleep stuff. And then when it came out, there was like a Cactus Club bootleg, and there was a few different things, and it was all really exciting, but it was also really scary, because it was like, what the fuck is going on with Deftones? why is Chino making an album with the other guy with these whole other band? You know what I mean?
Well,
Yeah,
they did. I think Deftones did come close to breaking up around then. I think that's why he was doing Team Sleep.
Yeah,
because I think
he was getting off drugs, is my understanding. Is he was getting off drugs and toured with Team Sleep in order to get away from temptation.
Gotcha.
I think he's laid that out on a couple of podcasts, maybe the Pure Pleasure podcast, or maybe it was the one with Toby Morse. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, that was a fucking wild time.
Yeah, I think it's
that produced some amazing music, like Team Sleep. I'm so glad that you brought it up. So just fucking Your Skull Is Red. Fuck out of here.
So
song,
God, dude.
Come on. You know what I
could die. I could die after listening to it during that song, and I'd be happy.
You know what kills me to this day? Like one of the greatest. Like I want to punch myself in the face for not going to that Woodstock sessions that they did. I don't know, a few years back. And I've talked to some people who went and trying to, drum up guests for this podcast, and holy shit, was it so amazing. And I'm so fucking like devastated that I missed it. Like, can you imagine?
Imagine like a tour, like a circuit, like around the country that they did
for the Woodstock thing?
Yeah.
I don't know. No, I think it was just this one-off thing where they invited people to kick it for a weekend, and they played and recorded that live album, and that was it. Yeah. Well, this was the Woodstock sessions, right?
Yes.
The original one. Yeah. From 05 or 03, whenever they started making tunes. And then Zach wasn't with them when they did the Woodstock sessions. But man, yeah, what you're saying about that dude, that motherfucker can drum a drum.
Oh my God.
Holy shit. That dude beats the head. I remember there's no way I'm gonna remember the name of the song, but like seeing the dude play the songs, it's like that doesn't seem rhythmic, but it is. It's totally not. You know what I mean? Like he was just insane.
Bizarro polyrhythms out the ass. If you like Hella or Team Sleep and Zach Hill in general, one of my favorite side projects of Zach Hill's was Bygones with Nick Reinhardt from Terra Mellos. And yeah, that first album that they put out, first two things they put out were phenomenal.
I don't know that at all. I'm definitely gonna.
It's Bygones, yeah, Bygones, and the cover art is like a young girl eating a burger in like
I get down with that.
restaurant.
I like burgers.
You'll just keep that in mind when you look it up, and you'll be like, that one.
Danny, you were a Team Sleep guy too, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I remember when they started leaking like the songs one by one on their MySpace, and like I remember hearing "Ever" Foreign Flag and being like, "This is one of the prettiest things I've ever heard in my fucking life."
Oh man.
And that for me, that carried over to Crosses too, man. I view Crosses as kind of like a continuation of Team Sleep, and that first Crosses record where they combined all the EPs into the one, that's another record I think is perfect. Like Epilogue, Bitches Brew, and Sean Lopez, dude, from fucking Far and Revolution Smile. That dude is brilliant, a brilliant producer, a brilliant songwriter. So to hear him and Chino come together, and also Dino from Dredge is the live drummer in Crosses. So it's kind of, you got like a Sacramento little incest happening over there.
Yeah, they do keep it all in the family, even with Lance, the new guitarist, Lance Jackman. I believe he's a Willhaven guy.
Okay, it could be.
I believe so.
Well, they're definitely all loyal to their own, and I always love that about that whole scene.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. Yeah, and I think you're right about there being a connection. You know, I like Palms. While we're talking about the Chino side joints, like the project he did with the guys from ISIS, I thought that was dope, but it wasn't as I didn't like it as much as Team Sleep and Crosses for sure.
No, yeah, definitely same.
Maybe something about it being a little bit more, I don't know, electronic and dancey as opposed to the Palms project. I don't know.
I think it had. I think, for lack of a better word, I think Team Sleep and Crosses just had a little bit more heart behind it, where Palms just kind of seemed like a project where it just they were trying to capture an atmosphere rather than heart.
Although my understanding is there might be some more shit coming from them, which would be, I'd still be interested to check it out. I mean, obviously I'm gonna check it out. Come on.
I mean, yeah, that's cool.
But yeah,
of course, totally.
But I remember at some point Chino said like that first Palms shit, like they had some heavier shit too, that for some reason or another just didn't ultimately make the album. I don't know that would have made it better, for lack of a better word, but I think I feel what you're saying in terms of it maybe didn't quite have the heart, whereas the Palm, like the Crosses stuff seems, I don't know, much more collaborative. The Palms thing sort of felt like Chino came in and did ISIS stuff.
Yeah, totally. Like with Crosses, you can definitely tell it's two friends that have known each other for decades, sitting in a studio, playing off each other, having a good fucking time, trying to make good music.
Couple goth guys playing some dancey goth music.
Dude, but like to go back to it though, like Sean Lopez, like with Crosses, everyone's always singling out Chino, but Sean Lopez is another guy that I really look up to because his work in Far, like Revolution Smile, I think was fucking criminally underrated, and his production work just fantastic also.
And I've heard Chino say something about the way Sean records his vocals or something. He likes the way that Sean, whatever it is, maybe the booth where he records, I don't know what it is, but I think there's something to that too, because there is a quality to his voice from the Crosses stuff that I feel like has even bled into Deftones. Although Sean did, I believe, have a hand in Saturday Night Wrist too. Like he was one of the producers of Saturday Night Wrist, if not maybe the final producer. That I would have to double check.
Wrist was the one, I think, yeah, because they were on the outs there. And
that was like all over the place. They weren't, I don't think, recording together even. Like they were.
Yeah, I think Sean was one of their engineers. He probably was Chino's engineer when Chino went in to do vocals.
That makes sense. That sounds.
But it's crazy, dude. For such a disjointed record, how fucking good is that record, though?
You tell me. What do you think about Saturday Night Wrist? Talk about Saturday Night Wrist.
I personally love Saturday Night Wrist. Like I just something about it that's, to me, it's their most mellow record, but it's their most frantic at the same time. Where like that whole melding of all the emotions they were going through, you hear it in the music. It comes across like seamlessly. It's not my favorite record from them. Koi no Yokon's definitely my favorite.
Really?
But Saturday, yeah, totally.
Clear cut. You can say that confidently. That's the one.
Confidently, man. I have That fucking record's perfect. Swerve City, Entombed, like it's just the way that record flows. I wouldn't say it's their best record, but it's my favorite.
That's what's up. Yeah, it's hard to say even what's their best record. What do you think? What is well, actually, let me start with you, Sid. What do you think is their best record? Maybe not your favorite, but what do you think is their best?
Okay, what I think they're best. Okay, because that's different than what I think is my favorite.
Your favorite's almost a little harder, right?
Yeah. Jeez. What a shitty question. I'm just kidding. It's like I don't want to say White Pony just because it's kind of like the obvious one.
But I feel like that's why it's the correct answer.
Right? I think for me, it's between like Koino and Self-Titled and White Pony, which is amazing.
Great non-answer.
I know. So let's go with Koino Yokon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what do you think it is about Koino Yokon that makes it their best?
In a way, the fact that they're able to persist for so long and still put out such a well-produced and seamless album and still have like hooks, Yeah, they're all very different from one another. So yeah.
Have you checked out Ohms yet, Sid?
I listened to it a couple of times when it first came out, but I haven't gone back to it since. And I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. I kind of feel the same way about Ohms as like the way you described Koino Yokon. I kind of feel the same way about Ohms. It's what about you, Danny? Have you listened to Ohms? It sounds like obviously you
Yeah, not totally. I love Ohms. I haven't sat with it for long enough to know where it places in the echelon of their discography for me. Yeah. But it definitely, honestly, it feels like a spiritual successor to White Pony. Like it feels like if they wanted to make a sequel to White Pony, Ohms is that record.
Interesting. Why? Why do you think that?
Going back to Terry Date producing it, so sonically, a lot of that's there. A lot of the immediacy. It's like with White Pony, it felt like they kind of had maybe not something to prove, but like when they were going in to do White Pony, it was their mission statement. Like, like new metal was kind of getting shit on. They wanted to kind of spread their wings, bring in some of their, like 80s new wave and post-rock influences. And Ohms kind of feels like the same thing, except that they've Deftones established themselves, and Ohms was kind of like them coming home. That's how it felt like to me.
That's really cool. That's a really cool way to think about it. That's interesting. I love hearing people's perception and interpretation of the whole catalog. It's really neat to think, because obviously we know the facts and we know, the history, but there are a lot of things that are left to interpretation, and they don't say a lot of things, I think, to allow us to have these conversations. And it's interesting too, because so often the conversation is just about White Pony and it's not about everything else. Mm-hmm. So like you said, for instance, saying like White Pony is the best album, like that's the right answer. And is that how you feel, like White Pony is the best one? Dan?
I think so. Because White Pony, I think, was their lightning in a bottle. It was like the right moment, the right place, the right sounds, just the right blend of everything. Like White Pony was just it, man. That record's perfect. Like again, Koino Yokon's my favorite, but like you can't deny the influence White Pony had. I remember being in sixth and seventh grade, and the pop punk kids didn't really talk to the metal kids, and the punk rock kids didn't associate. Deftones was the common denominator through all of them. Everyone loved White Pony.
That's cool as shit. Yeah, man. There are undeniable songs on that album. But I also think there's some undeniable songs on Diamond Eyes. We haven't talked about Diamond Eyes yet. Sid, you haven't really gotten into Diamond Eyes. Is that fair to say?
Right. What was that? 08?
2010. Yeah.
So I haven't listened to much of it. For the record, I love all of the album art of like the newer albums. Like I look at it and I'm like, oh, I would love this, like, but anyway, not to, just look at the surface. One of my favorite Deftones songs in general is Sex Tape, but I haven't listened to the rest of the album like in its entirety from front to back. Maybe once. I got to go back to these albums.
I think Diamond Eyes is the record that just like, I'm looking at the track list right now. It has the best singles. Like you got the title track, you've seen The Butcher, Beauty School, Rocket Skates. It's like
Butcher, Rocket Skates, yeah.
Yeah. And I love 976 Evil. I always loved when Deftones would have those weird little ballads at the end, like 976 Evil, like anniversary of an uninteresting event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Those are fascinating ways to end an album, I think. You know what I mean? Instead of finishing hard with something that's like super brutal and then walking off with it, like to end it with something pretty it's an interesting choice. I
love that, dude. I love when bands do that. I love when the whole record is relentless and the last song is this big, like thematic, like grand sort of like statement.
Yeah.
You know?
What do you think the statement they were trying to make with Lucky You was? Because you guys both are into self-titled. What do you think they were doing with this weird electronic song that didn't have a single guitar in it? I know that they plugged it onto the Matrix soundtrack, but I don't know that was the reason that it made the album over a song like Lovers, which they just started playing live for the first time ever. But a lot of people think that should have been the song on the album instead of Lucky You, which is this weird synthy. It's almost like a Crosses song. You know what I mean? It's not. It doesn't feel so much like a Deftones song. What were they trying to do when they did that?
I mean, to me, I always felt like it was like them waving their middle finger back at being lumped in with the new metal scene.
Word.
That's kind of how I always, like, every time they made those left turns or started. That's why White Pony felt like that. Because White Pony was like, Limp Bizkit was already on its way out. Wes Borland quit. Korn was kind of starting to work with like super producers. Yeah, that's man. Crazy. Like the early 2000s was around then. That's when new metal started getting good. The bad rap.
Even Wes was like, I had it. Dude, fuck this guy in the hat.
But we're seeing Limp Bizkit next week. Actually, they're playing fucking Madison Square Garden, and I couldn't be more excited.
Dude, that's
he's about to cry.
An amazing show. I've seen Limp Bizkit, I don't know, 4 or 5 times, and I've never been disappointed. Never.
Dude, the band is so good. Like take Fred aside. Wes Borland is just such a unique and creative player. And their rhythm section, man, like John Otto and Sam Rivers, fucking butthole tight right there.
And honestly, I think Fred is great. I think Fred for what he does and what he's supposed to do, and they played fucking stadiums around the world. Like, he's,
totally.
He's pretty good. He's well practiced. You know what I mean? Even now when he's doing the least, right? Like he's putting on a wig and some old man shoes, some Velcro shoes, and he's like really hamming up the whole dad vibe thing. He's doing less, but it's still like somehow amazing. That's really.
I love to see. I'm loving seeing the renaissance that he's getting. That he's no longer this hated individual. Now he's like this like national treasure, kind of like elder statesman.
Truly,
it's fucking heartwarming to see.
And they brought some awesome bands out with them.
Oh, dude, yeah, they got Sprawl on the tour with them.
It's so cool. It's so cool seeing them being embraced. Do you feel like that the entire new metal scene is it's not what it was 10 years ago, right? Or even 15 years ago when people were just taking shits over anything that might have had a little rap over a syncopated rhythm. What do you think, Sid? Tell me, both of you guys, tell me what you think about, like, what is the perception of new metal anymore?
I feel like it's way more accepted now. Not that they were like a band that I actually liked at the time that they came out, but I feel like Linkin Park definitely like helped bridge that gap for a lot of like younger people at the time. And what Danny said, I think it's really cool that, just as an aside, that Fred Durst is like more revered now and just like respected, because he definitely got a bad rap for like most of his early tenure. So that's cool. It's cool to see. I mean, he seems like a decent guy. I don't know.
Totally. I think he earned it too. He probably earned it at least a little bit. You know what I mean? I came across a picture today where it's like it's him and Kid Rock, and they're both giving the camera the finger, but they have their middle fingers like crossed, like they're crossing swords or something. And I'm like, who? They agreed to this? You know what I'm saying?
The most 1998 photograph.
Like they earned it a little bit. They earned it a little bit, but I think you're right. Like a lot of it was the fans were really shitty. You know?
That's what a lot of it was, man. It definitely a lot of like bro dudes. Like that's why I always felt bad for people like John Davis and Fred Durst, because it seemed like they made this music to get away from certain people, and then those certain people ended up being their whole fucking fan base.
What do you think it was that helped Deftones identify that, like that was happening, and they said, we gotta go the other way, that we can't tour with these bands, we can't be with these bands, like, because there had to be, even within the Korns and Limp Bizkit, some awareness of what was happening, and how that probably wasn't great, but you know the money was flowing. There was all sorts of success happening, and yet Deftones managed to identify that there was a reason to go the other way.
I always got the interpretation with Deftones, just like as far as people, that they were kind of the weird introverted stoners that sat in the corner, that were always kind of nerding out over weird 80s new wave and post rock. And like, instead of going crazy about Faith No More and Helmet, they're talking about like suicide and television. So they kind of, I feel like it was with Deftones, it was a matter of time before they started taking all these experimental approaches. Because dude, even if you go back to their demos, that the Like Linus demo they put out, I think in '93, that shit's all over the place. You have like one song that sounds like a Bad Brains reggae song. The song Like Linus just straight up sounds like a Nirvana song with like metal verses.
Yeah.
So from the jump, I feel like they were definitely already getting ready to jump out of their own skin.
And what do you think about where they are now? How do we? Because that's the crazy thing about Deftones, and I think Korn to some extent. Linkin Park probably would still be the best example if they were still an active band, but to survive the new metal like revolt, continue to make interesting albums. Like how do we? What is this part of their career? They're not doing like the nostalgia tours. They're not going on tour with like Korn and Evanescence are going on tour together. And now you could argue like they both got new albums, but let's face it, like 2003 was when Korn and Evanescence were huge.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? But you don't see Deftones touring with Korn or Evanescence. They don't do that sort of thing. Like it's super unique.
I think it all just comes down to the fact that Deftones are just massive music fans, and they don't give a shit about catering. They just want to listen to as much music as they can, and they want to make the best music that they feel they're suited to make, without really like worrying about what other people think about them. And that's kind of the feeling that I always got from them, and that's part of what I always respected about them. I was just like, fuck what's happening, let's go do our own thing. Everyone's fucking, bringing in, like, everyone's bringing in DJs. All right, Frank, you're not touching the turntable anymore. Here's a synthesizer, that sort of thing.
Totally. Yeah, that's really interesting. And Sid, you mentioned a couple of times that Deftones have influenced your playing, like your style of play. Is that specific to like Chi or to?
Yeah, Chi was mostly he was a plucker. He used his fingers, like an old school bassist. So I always admired that. I think I heard something where like he, not intentionally but unintentionally, like would like kind of be like a millisecond behind everyone, but that kind of gave it like a certain type of dynamic and certain type of sound for the whole band, and it just happened to meld and mesh and work, and I thought that was always interesting. Yeah, Chi Chang, it's just like a gentle dude, really cool bassist. Yeah, most of my bass influences are actually Geezer Butler from Sabbath and Mike Dirnt from Green Day. even like Matt Freeman from Rancid. But yeah, I always admired Chi Chang's playing. And yeah, it's funny what Danny said before too. I like to jump around here, forgive me, about Deftones being influenced by a lot of like synth pop and 80s new wave, and it shows obviously, because I want to talk about that B-Sides and Rarities album, because one of my favorite covers of them is The Chauffeur from Duran
Yes.
Duran.
Yeah.
Dude, that Duran Duran cover is so good. Like, oh my God, I love it.
Their Cars cover.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do a
Which
Smiths cover too. Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
album did they do that Cars cover for? Was that for the B-sides?
That was, I think they put out just a record called Covers
Yeah.
for one of the record store days.
For sure. Yes, that's right.
But I don't think it was like one solid recording session. I think I was reading somewhere that at every album they'll record one or two covers. Like the Simple
Right.
Man cover was recorded during Adrenaline. I think the Please Please Let Me Get What I Want, the Smiths cover, was done like during Around the Fur. I could be wrong on that, but they just compiled all of them and made this amazing covers record.
I feel like we haven't had any other ones since then. Like they haven't released any other covers since that time.
I'm sure they're probably sitting on a bunch. I mean, like, come on.
I know there was a couple after Diamond Eyes, right? Like they did that Cardigans cover, and I think they released those maybe with like a deluxe edition of the album or something. I'm not entirely sure, but I know that those are streaming.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure in a few years we'll get like another follow-up covers record. I'm still waiting for Eros, man. I still want to hear Cheese.
Get out of town.
Work.
You think that's gonna man? You're gonna be waiting for a long ass time for that one.
I mean, Chino leaked Smile a few years ago, and it was incredible.
Right.
And who knows, man? We'll see. Especially now with Sergio gone, because I feel like part of the reason they were apprehensive about revisiting Eros is out of respect to Sergio being there. And now Sergio's not, they kind of have a temporary situation going on. If anything, I think now's the time for them to kind of go back, finish up some of those tracks, and get the thing out.
Interesting. And you think that's on the table?
I don't think it's off the table.
Interesting. I would be stunned. I would be flat out. I would be floored if they released that album in any shape. I mean, Smile was definitely, it seemed like an average. I'm not saying you're wrong either. I don't want to disagree, because I would love to hear it.
Yeah, no, totally.
Like I want to hear that shit.
Even just to give us like a truncated EP of like 5 or 6 of the finished songs, just to let us hear what, Cheese final work, let us hear, because I remember reading that Eros was the record where they were coming out of their quote unquote dark days, and they were like back in the room jamming, hanging out with one another, and it was like the energy was contagious. Yeah, so I'd love to hear that.
It would be very interesting too, given the success of Diamond Eyes and how that, really, that was lightning in a bottle, and how that took off in the aftermath of those recordings. And that session, those sessions obviously were, just prior to Cheese accident.
Yeah. I think if anything, I remember reading somewhere that almost all the music's finished. It's really just coming down to the vocals. Yeah.
I feel like I've read almost something the opposite, or maybe it was like More Than We Know is finished or something like that. There's never any real consistent story, and the band's never gonna give us anything consistent. I've heard 2 or 3 different stories of how like My Own Summer was written. Like they're all over the place. There's no unified narrative with some of this shit. But that leaves that door open for speculation and hope, false hope.
Yeah. I mean, I like I said, I feel like part of the reason they didn't go forward with working on it is out of respect to both Chi and Sergio.
Yeah. I think that's fair. That's fair.
Only time to tell.
With those B-sides, I feel like I was put onto Jawbox. I was put on to Deftones put me on to other bands and other stuff, and a lot of time it's through their covers. Either you guys get put on to other bands via Deftones? I mean, other than the maybe the Sacramento bands, like that scene that we've sort of already talked about.
I don't know if I got into other bands from Deftones, but some other bands that I liked, it kind of like reaffirmed them for me. Like seeing Deftones covering Drive Like Jihu, or covering, like you said, Jawbox. Be like, fuck yeah, I love those bands. Deftones love those bands. We're good. We're in there.
That's cool as shit. What about you, Sid? Or was that
like it renews that love? Actually, more recently, I'd say the covers album got me into some like older 80s stuff that I wouldn't normally get into, like the Cars and Duran Duran.
That first Cars record is
That first
perfect.
Cars record is out of control. Yeah,
Or-
that first Cars record is a wild.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I mean, think about it. How many more records exist like that where every song is a hit single? Every
Yeah.
fucking song is just, you've heard it in movies, radio, everywhere at some point in your life growing up.
yeah, I know, it's wild, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's pretty unique, and I don't know if Diamond Eyes, I think, like we talked about, it has a lot of singles, a lot of songs that are popular, especially I think popular amongst Deftones fans, but there's something about them that they haven't quite hit that, like, you know, massive commercial success here. Like it is an album stacked with just singles. Diamond Eyes is the closest, you think?
Yeah, definitely. Because Diamond Eyes, it just, I feel like it was their most immediate work. It was like, she got into an accident. Our boy just came in and had to help us out. Let's get into a room and just do what we do to get through this.
You think
So they
something
just
about that pressure cooker that they were in is sort of what produced all those gems?
Yeah, it just felt like they had to get in a room and just get it all out. And that's why Diamond Eyes was just so great, so immediate, just fucking caves your chest in on that first listen. And dude, like we were saying, every single on that record is like a hit. Every single that came off that record.
Yeah, they got some fucking songs. Is that how you guys create? How do you guys come up with stuff? Does one of you like come in with an idea, or do you jam, or how do you guys create?
We all come with ideas. I think Danny's the sole songwriter in general, though.
I mean, I bring riffs, and then I'll bring riffs, and then Sid and Dale and I will just jam on them until it turns into something. You know, Dale will take a riff and he'll flip it upside down, which will make me want to play it a different way, and the songs will come together like that. And
So
then sometimes sometimes it's just straight up freestyle jamming, getting into the room, throwing the instruments on, and just playing, seeing what happens.
And then what you go like, oh, I like that. We like this. Let's carve that out, and then put some words on it, and there it is. That's how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, some of the songs, like you just feel it when you just lock onto a part that's grooving. You're living in it. You feel it.
That's sick. I love that idea of discovery and how something goes from like a seed to a song, and then the life a song takes. I'm super interested in how songs evolve from the thing that you have on a record to the thing that becomes alive when you perform it, and then that takes a different shape. And some bands, they stay real true and they stay like, this is how we recorded it, this is how we're going to play it. And then some bands sort of let it go and then do their own thing. Have you guys figured out what you are yet? How your songs are executed live, or are you still sort of figuring it? Because I mean, you lost a couple of years of opportunity to grow as a band. I mean, early too. Like that's harsh. Are you still in that discovery period, or you know what you guys do at this point?
Weirdly enough, actually, right as the pandemic happened, our old drummer left the band. So it was kind of just the timing of everything worked out. And we actually, immediately after, we found our way to Dale. And when Dale came in, who's our new drummer, that's when we kind of like clicked, like immediate musical chemistry happened there, kind of all had different tastes of music that overlapped in just the right areas that we were able just to get in and fucking fly through things. As far as translating some of the songs live, we've definitely been running into that issue lately, where some of the songs that we wrote for the record, we're now trying to include into the set, and we're just looking at each other like, fuck, man, this song is hard.
We also recently went from a 5-piece to a 4-piece. So 1 guitar, 1 bass, drums.
How does that change things for you?
Still the same amount of amps on stage as one less person.
Yeah. I think about Deftones in particular as that pertains, with the lineup change, and they've added a guitarist. And I've considered like what that does and the things that allows and permits. But when you shrink and you go down a person, I would imagine that sort of raises the stakes for everybody else.
It raises the stakes for everybody else, but it's creatively a little bit more freeing.
How so?
It's not as many hands in the pot. And I feel like everyone's kind of, the less people you have, the easier it is to get everyone on the same page. You know, once you start bringing more people in, it's more, you know, more cooks in the kitchen. And it's not to disparage our old guitar players. Like Frank and Brett are incredible guitar players. Their contributions to the band were great. We're all still on great terms. It just played out the way it is.
Sure, totally.
And we're definitely evolving way more into being like a riff band. And riff band is just like, you know, you got to just have that riff just dead in the middle, just cutting right through.
That's cool. I think that's a great segue to one of my last questions, not the last question, but one of Danny. What is your favorite riff? I'll go with your favorite album. Let's go with, what's your favorite riff off Koi?
The tapping part of Intuned. That do
Really?
do. It's just so fucking pretty. But if we want to go full Deftones, Swerve City, that da 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 da.
Yeah.
Because I listened to your episode with Head from Korn, and how he broke down Steph's guitar playing, perfect. Like that's what makes him perfect. It's just he doesn't overplay. He knows exactly what needs to be there, and he plays it so fucking well. And he can shred. Like if you pull up videos of them from like back in the day when they were still trying to figure out who they were, like you see videos of Steph like shredding up and down the neck. So I
have not seen those videos. Send me the link to those videos. I want to see the videos where he's shredding.
Dude, I don't know if you saw. There's this one video. It was from '92 or '93. They had a different drummer. Abe wasn't in the video, but she was in the video. And it was like a public access thing where they had like a stupid little interview in the first like 5 minutes, and then after that, it was playing all their pre-adrenaline old songs. Yeah, Chino sounded amazing right out of the gate. This kid sounded killer.
He said to me, because I know what you're talking about, and I'm gonna forget the name of the show that they were on. Something about Sacto scene. God, I'm gonna forget it. But when I saw that for the first time, because that came out, I think, in its entirety during the pandemic.
Yep.
So we'd never seen a lot of that before. And when I saw it, I was like, I don't even know who these little babies are. Like this doesn't even.
Yeah, man.
I mean, I guess maybe there were moments where I was like, okay, there's Deftones in there, but to me, it was like different band. If I would have seen them at that time, I would have never in a million years guessed that would end up being my favorite band in the history of the world. You know what I mean? Like never imagined.
Yeah.
You feel differently?
I think like Linus is a banger. Like that song, if they re-recorded and put it out, I fucking love that song. The rest of it was, definitely I'm trying to figure out what their sound was for sure.
Yeah.
But it seemed like they were on to something early on. And honestly, a big part of it was just the chemistry. Like you could tell like they love each other. They love being around each other. They love making music together. And it's like, once you have that in a unit together, like it's maybe unstoppable. It's kind of like a shitty word to use, but like, you know, there's not really any ceilings to what you can do together creatively.
Unfuckwithable. I have a Deftones sweatshirt that says it says I can't be fucked with or unfuckwithable or something like that. Yeah. Sid, you got a favorite bass line or a favorite bass part from?
Jeez. It's probably something off of Adrenaline, honestly, as far as bass goes.
Yeah.
I can't put the name of the song to it. Honestly, guitar riffs, like they had fucking amazing riffs on Adrenaline too, like Lifter.
Dude, Lifter's so good.
Right? Root. Oh man.
Yeah.
I was just listening to Bloody Cape is a sick riff on
Yeah,
Koino Yokon. I think Danny covered them for that album because a lot of it was like maybe not as riffy, but more like melodic and spacious and ambient, ethereal. Dude, yeah, so many bass riffs though. I want you to come back to me with that one if you
bet.
Yeah, so speaking of bass, though, I feel kind of bad for how they did Sergio, just because I'm a massive Quicksand fan.
Yeah. What do you think could have gone down differently?
Yeah, I mean, they could have cut him in. I mean, he was in the band for long enough, and I understand, like, you know, nowadays the finances of being in a band, like some of the biggest bands that are like, you know, within metal and hardcore, like if you ask them to break down their finances to you, they're probably honestly walking away with like 75K, 80K a year, you know.
Like
If
at
it's like
best, probably, right?
yeah, exactly. Like if it's a fairly consistent year, if they're on the road 250, 300 days out of the year. So like it's not really, you know, being in a niche genre, like, you know, a big niche genre band isn't exactly like a lucrative sort of lifestyle. And I don't know if I would say Deftones are millionaires, and it is their livelihood. So I kind of get it. But you know, Sergio, he's been there for a minute. He came in during a low point. He's fucking Sergio from Quicksand, man. I'm from New York. I love Quicksand.
Yeah, I can appreciate that.
Mm.
I feel like there is a lot left that we just don't like. There's a whole other side of the story that we don't know, because they haven't said anything. Like Deftones have released no official word. But then, you know, when I was reflecting on it as all of the shit went down, I don't think they ever announced Sergio was like joining the band. I think all of a sudden he was just in the band.
Yeah, no, I did.
There
I think
was.
he was just like a paid contributor. But I mean, he was always in the promo pictures with them and whatnot.
Always in the promo pictures, doing the radio interviews, doing all the things. But
Songwriting.
apparently a hugely instrumental, pardon the pun, part of Gore, and Ohms, I think, as well. Very, yeah. I have a lot of questions myself about how all of that went down and the reasons why. I don't know that we're ever gonna like Eros. I don't know that we're ever gonna get to see those.
Probably
answers.
not. Probably it's Deftones are one of the most coyest, mysterious bands. So probably not
They
gonna get a lot of
They should have
answers,
spelled it Coy, COY. No,
yeah, right.
Coy,
Yeah.
no, none of your business is what it should have been called. Telling us shit. Okay, well, one of the last questions, the last question I like to ask. Actually, you know what, Sid? Did you come up with a baseline? Is it 1 week?
I did.
Yeah. What is it?
It was almost 1 week. It was actually 7 words. When the bass comes in on 7 words, it's like boom, 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 boom.
Yes.
I actually, yeah, dude. I play that. That's like my warm up riff when I'm doing sound check. Usually,
Word.
I don't think anyone realizes it.
You guys ever jam out on a Deftones track?
We thought about doing a cover, right? Remember recently we were thinking
Yeah, no, we talked about covering Elite. And we it's,
Dude.
yeah, Elite's not entirely off the table, but we ended up just because Elite, it's like a 4-minute song, and you know, playing hardcore shows after 2 minutes, you know, kids get bored, and we don't want to grind away. Like Elite's an amazing song, but it's the same riff for 4 minutes, you know.
Yeah.
Well,
maybe cut it in half. Who's to say you can't just end it early?
Yeah, this is true. I mean, we ended up
interpretation.
We ended up going with Sweet Pea from System of a Down.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and that one was fun to do.
Bangs. I bet that shit bangs. That's super exciting.
It was fun.
System is another one that I feel like we sort of forget that they were a new metal era band. I guess they were a little late and not exactly new metal, but they sort of got, them and Slipknot both sort of got like at arm's reach of new metal, but managed to escape some of the shittier associations with new metal.
Do you watch any of the like the 2 Minutes to Late Night with Guarsenio?
Totally.
Did you see his where he did like his high school booklet reviews of the Slipknot record?
No.
He made and honestly, in hindsight, I think I agree with him where he said that Slipknot is a hardcore band. The first Slipknot record is a hardcore record. And at its core, it really like, I feel like it does have more in line with like, you know, that era of just like, you know, like Strife, like Snapcase, like that sort of like immediacy and just pure anger, like Earth Crisis and stuff like that. It was dude, that first Slipknot record to this day, I think is one of the angriest records I've heard in my life.
Totally. Yeah. Can't argue with that. I'm gonna have to listen to that again. I mean, I play some of the, you know, some of the songs every now and then, like on the radio and stuff, but it's been a while since I've actually like listened to it because I really liked the last Slipknot album. So I've been like, if I'm listening to Slipknot, that's like what I've been listening to. And I fucking love Snapcase too. So I'm gonna have to listen to that shit.
Yeah,
again.
dude.
Just really.
Oh, dude. First Slipknot album is amazing.
Yeah.
Eyeless.
Sick. Dun 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 dun.
Yeah,
Only
dude.
One. Oh man, that whole first album. Yeah.
Yeah, Slipknot. Slipknot's another sort of a unicorn. but I don't know. Maybe it was the masks and that there was a little bit more to like and not I don't want to say gimmicky, but theater or something. Maybe that separated them from
super theatery. Yeah, their live shows, especially.
Totally.
But I mean,
it's probably entertaining as hell back then, you know.
Still to this day, I saw Slipknot like a month ago. Yeah,
right,
they fucking
right.
it's spectacle. Yeah. It's all spectacle.
Like I saw them at Riot Fest last year, and it's actually a funny little story. I went to one of the local Chicago dispensaries, and I wanted to get bang for my buck, so I asked them for weed that had the highest THC count.
You and I would get along. You and I would be really great friends. I feel like we need to kick it.
Oh, dude, definitely. You actually would have loved this. So I get this. I think it was like 35% THC or something. I roll a joint and Slipknot's getting ready to go on. And you know how at festivals people kind of stand apart from each other. No one's crammed in tightly together like they are at venue shows.
Sure.
So I'm smoking this joint. I'm walking like in between all these people, and so the Slipknot on stage is like my North Star. I'm just following the stage, and at one point I fucking walked through a group of people and I ended up walking right into the middle of the pit. Bro, I got shoved violently for like 5 seconds. It felt like an eternity, and I think at one point I openly shrieked and ran out of the pit.
You're like trying not just drop your shit. Yeah.
Dude, my 12-year-old self would have kicked my own ass if he saw that.
Did you drop the joint though?
No.
Well, then it was a successful journey then.
Yeah, definitely.
As long as the joint survived.
But I do remember kind of like getting off to the side from that and watching, and it was like, this is cool, but seeing Slipknot now kind of feels like I'm seeing Kiss.
Yeah, there is definitely a bit of that. Yeah, totally.
Which I mean, dude, I get it. They're all in their 40s and 50s. You know, you can't be fucking beating the shit out of each other with kegs every single night, well into, you know, older ages, and they're still killing it. The new stuff's awesome. Jay Weinberg's a great drummer. They're
still beating the hell out of them kegs.
Yeah, dude. No, but like you said the word unicorn. I think that's perfect because like not only in their early days, but they're still a unicorn in the sense of like you've had these member changes where your important members that wrote all the music are not in the band or unfortunately alive anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And you guys are still fucking killing it. Like the new stuff is just as good as the old stuff.
Yeah. I think Corey sounds better than ever too.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah, great band.
Yes. Speaking of unicorns, have you checked out Corey Taylor's newest solo rap single?
Oh my god,
no!
It's really, really not good.
He's rapping. He's got a song where he's rapping.
He's got a song called like Corey motherfucking Taylor or something. It's just like
with Tech Nine.
Like huge power trip. It's like really hilarious, honestly.
He put out a solo record, I believe, in the middle of the pandemic, and it was kind of like, all right, man, you're having fun. Fucking good on you.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was a joke or what.
Let me ask you guys this question. Since you brought up rap, I've always maintained that Chino was a phenomenal rapper, and while he didn't like necessarily how about this? Like Back to School is a great example of Chino rapping over that is a new metal song. And
or
to
Wicked,
me,
Corn, where he did vocal.
Great. There are examples of Chino rapping all the way up until, you know, White Pony, and then it's like it's done. Then he doesn't rap anymore. I haven't heard him like spit a lyric or spit a verse. You know what I mean? Would it be weird? Would it be goofy or lame if he rapped again?
I feel like if he did it, it would be forced, because I feel like you can chart his musical evolution, and it would seem like he'd be taking a back turn. Like someone like Corey Taylor, not so much, because he's kind of always worn everything he listens to, what he is on his sleeve.
Sure.
Chino's definitely had a solid evolution there, where I feel like it would kind of be.
He's outgrown it.
Yeah, maybe outgrowing it is a little too strong, but it's definitely
some of those crosses beats. They make me want to start spitting some lyrics. I tell you what, I bet Chino would rap the shit out of some of those crosses songs.
You're over in Minneapolis, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so you got the whole rhyme sayers. You got like a Atmosphere, Brother Ali,
all that shit. Yeah, I like Brother Ali, but I don't fuck with Atmosphere. I don't know.
Like, I've been there.
But yeah, but I love rap music. I love hip hop music. I loved new metal. Like I loved that whole point in time where it's like my two favorite genres of music intersected, and it was, it was awesome to experience. And maybe it's nostalgia, or maybe it's kink and fantasy, but it's fun to think about like Chino rapping again. I think it's just kind of cool.
I mean, I feel like also with new metal as a whole, like there's definitely a well-needed reevaluation happening, because there was some good shit that fell through the cracks, man. Like Nothing Face was an amazing band. That first Dry Kill Logic record was awesome.
You mentioned Spine Shank. Spine Shank's got some joints.
Spine Shank was awesome. There were some of those new metal bands that like they didn't really have any cheese. They didn't really like cater to like what was kind of happening in the mainstream end of new metal, and they were killing it. Like I love those bands.
Soulfly.
So yeah, Soulfly. I mean, Soulfly went back to just sounding like Sepultura after a couple records, which is still cool.
I feel like I just saw today Soulfly put out a new song, or announced a new song, or something like that. I think.
Yeah, it's probably.
I haven't checked it out though.
I think they got Dino from Fear Factory playing guitar for them now.
Oh, word.
Yeah, Fear Factory.
If Max is doing something, I'm gonna look at it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, totally.
No matter what it is, I'm gonna reserve judgment. If Max is doing it, I'm gonna give it my attention.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Whether or not I give it my attention twice is a whole nother story.
But it's with the Fear Factory association, because here's the thing: I'm a massive Fear Factory fan. They're like one of the formative bands of my childhood.
Awesome.
Not a big fan of the divas they seem to all be.
Yeah.
It seems like whenever there's something Fear Factory related, there's always some sort of drama around it. And now Dino being in Soulfly, it's like, I'll check it out maybe when the record's out.
And I think too, that's an interesting thing. And thinking about Deftones, because I agree that there are some, you want the musicians you like to be cool people.
Yeah, totally.
They just seem like dudes you'd want to kick it with. You know what I mean? And I think that's part of what makes the Sergio circumstances tough pill to swallow, or tough even to assess. You know what I mean? It's weird.
Yeah, it's a bummer. But I mean, at the same time too, though, like they always came off like very introverted individuals. So it kind of makes sense that if they were to kind of come to a crossroads like this, they would probably go about it in maybe a more introverted way.
Yeah. It's an interesting time for the band, but it's almost always an interesting time. Better interesting than boring or terrifying, which is what it was around the mid-aughts. It was scary if they were even going to be a band. I was like,
I'm curious to see where they're going to go. If they're going to, who's the guy's Fred Sablon who's filling in for them right now?
Right. Yep.
I'm curious to see if he's going to stick around and if he's going to become a contributor. Like, I'm just curious to see where they go creatively now as like a core 4-piece.
Sure. Yeah. No, I agree. And I think the spring tour is going to wrap up this month, and then they'll, I think, head to Europe. And if he's going along with them, I think that trip is what's going to ultimately, be the tail of the tape or whatever, right? Like that's going to be the indicating factor of
totally
what happens next. But no matter who it is, I'm sure that it's very clear that they are not a permanent member, that they are a hired gun.
It seems like going forward, they're probably going to take that approach where like that bass player role, it's like it was Cheese and now it's nobody's. It's always Cheese.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens, because it's still going to be a couple of years, because they're going to finish their tour cycle. Chino's going to put out that new Crosses record. They're going to go on a cycle for the Crosses record. So it's still probably going to be like another 4 years before we get the next Deftones record.
Hopefully we get more weed in that time. I would like some more Deftones weed in that time. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
One of the question I like to ask to wrap up every pod, because it's been over an hour. I don't want to take any more of your time. Plus, it's Top Chef night. My wife's gonna kick my ass if I don't go watch Top Chef. The way I like to wrap the pod is with a request for recommendations. It's based on something Chino said on a pod once, where the only thing he likes to share on social media is links to songs that he likes, because he thinks that's the coolest thing that he could share with anybody on social media. So in that spirit, even though I know it's a loaded question and I know it puts you on the spot, but I like the spontaneity of it and the whatever comes to your mind aspect of it. Put me onto something. Normally I ask for 3 things, but I'll just, since we've got the 2 of you guys, how about 2 each? And it can be anything, and it's not certainly limited to music. It could be more than 2 or less than 2, whatever you're into tossing my way. If it's a book, a movie you saw, an activity that you would like to recommend. It can the field is wide open. 2 things that you think people should give some time to.
I got 2 for you. It's both music related. So new, there's a band called Dallas Cowboys out right now. I don't know if you're familiar with them. It's Dallas Cowboys with the first letter switched up.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. They just put out a new song, and they're one of those bands that you got to keep an eye on them because they're young. They're all in their early 20s. You can tell they're growing as musicians, and they're only getting better and better. And their new song is ridiculous. And then for the second one, if we're going back, I've been obsessed with, as weird as it is, a lot of like psychedelic krautrock from like the late 60s, early 70s. And there's this band called Can, and they have this song called Vitamin C. And it's almost like it's weird, but it has like almost like the fury of like punk rock, but like a little bit of that like bluesy groove to it. And it's just, there was something about that era of music in Europe at that time that was just so fucking weird, but so cool at the same time.
And tell me again the name of the band.
Can,
like CAN or like KA?
Yep.
Yeah,
CAN. Start with the song Vitamin C.
All right.
And then kind of just work your way back from there. They're insane. Like the singer they have on that song, Vitamin C. So their first record, they had their German band, they had an American singer, and then the American singer had a mental breakdown and quit. And they found their replacement singer, who was like this homeless Japanese guy just busking on the streets of Berlin. And they asked him, like, hey man, do you want to be our singer? And he was on stage with them that night.
Holy shit. What? That's insane.
And he stayed, and he was their singer for like 6-7 years after
No
that.
way.
Yeah, dude.
Damn, that's a crazy ass story.
Dude, Can is fantastic. Like when people talk about that whole era of like, you know, krautrock type of music, they always go to like Kraftwerk and whatnot. Can. That's the band.
Can. All right. You sold me on homeless Japanese guy. That's I'm in. I'm in. What about you, Sid? You got a couple for me?
Yeah, I'll do a couple music related. I think this guy, is worthy of some recognition. He's kind of like a starving artist, like the king of lo-fi and home recordings. Stevie Moore. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Oh, hell yeah.
Mm-mm.
He was always like a really prolific, has like hundreds of songs and albums out, and was kind of like in the realm of like lo-fi, like indie rock type stuff in like the 70s, 80s, 90s, and then was more associated in like the 2000s with, I guess you could say, more like hipster Brooklyn artists like Ariel Pink. But he does his own thing, and he's a pretty like eclectic, interesting character, and I like a lot of his DIY recordings, so you might like him. Stevie Moore. And I was listening to, you know what? I got to give a shout out to, rest in peace, MF Doom. So
Yeah.
New York rapper. I think to me and Danny, like, he's just like really well known to us. Like, it's like, oh, MF Doom. Everyone knows MF Doom,
All caps when you spell the man name.
Yeah. So I'll leave it at that. Yeah, MF and Stevie Moore. Interesting 2 choices, I guess you could say.
Thanks to both Danny and Sid for kicking it with me. You can find Bore on all the streaming platforms. If you want to hear more of their music, search for Bore Hardcore on social media. Make it easier on yourself. About a week ago, Danny tweeted that they'd finished pre-production on 8 of 12 new songs for their LP. He said they got some moshers, some hard left turns, a 6-minute closer with grand pianos, and a post-rock outro, all of which sounds banging to me. I'm ready. Let's get bored. Well, we are officially in the home stretch here of Season 3. I'm not going to say how many episodes remain yet because, well, I don't want to jinx anything, but I'll tell you what, I'm looking forward to not thinking about this podcast all the time, at least for a couple of months. I still welcome your stories, though. My name is Woody. If you want to reach me, talk about the show, tell me your stories, I'm at Woodbruh on Twitter and Instagram, so hit me up. Thank you for listening to Deftones. Thank you for listening to Changing the House of Pods.